What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Pack a Day Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. First and foremost, something not Packers related, something that's not even football related. Really cool moment in general in sports. This is still a sports conversation, and LeBron James setting the all-time record for points in the NBA. Just a really cool moment, and congratulations to him. As we look at sports as a whole and just kind of holistically, how many players in the history of sports had the hype that LeBron James had coming out, and to not only, come close to that hype or live up to that, like he surpassed that hype. And again, arguably the most hyped up prospect in any sport ever, LeBron James, and what he was doing in high school and the expectations for him in the NBA. And then to not only, again, live up to that hype, but surpass it and become at least at minimum in the conversation for greatest basketball player of all time. Just an amazing accomplishment to him, and kudos for that. And just one of those very rare sports moments. From one legend to another legend, we're of course going to be talking a little bit more about Aaron Rodgers, and I'm going to look you in the eye and be very transparent with you today. I went back and forth on today's topic. On the one hand, I get the Aaron Rodgers exhaustion at this point, and there's just an overarching feel of all right, what more can we talk about? And until Aaron Rodgers makes a decision, is there really anything more to talk about at this point? But today did feel very noteworthy, which I'm going to talk about more in just a moment. But the other thing here is I don't have a ton analytically to add to the conversation today, just being fully transparent. And I hate that because I don't want this to feel like an emotional, I always want to add something analytically or something anecdotally, or something that I can look you in the eye and be like, all right, I did my research and here's what I found. And I have some of that today, just, kind of looking at some stuff, but this is just a really interesting episode and just a really interesting topic in the fact that the big news of the day was a Vegas line that moved. And that's going to be our main topic. I do want to touch on a couple things really quick before we get there. Aaron Rodgers did talk on the Pat McAfee show once again, and he talked about how he's going to go about making his decision. And part of that decision is going to take a 4-day, 4-night isolation, dark retreat, no light, food through a slot or multiple slots. I don't know. But there was an interesting interaction with Mitchell Schwartz on Twitter that I just wanted to touch on really quick. So Mitchell Schwartz goes out and I'm sure sort of in jest, but says, weird that the Packers aren't consulting more with the guy who needs to go on a 4-day darkness retreat to figure out whether he wants to play football. So I don't know, jab, whatever. I get it. I totally get it. But Rodgers came back and said, quote, "Be curious, not judgmental. We are all on our own path, and doing things like this helps me find a greater sense of peace and love for life. Love and respect to you." I thought this was, quite honestly, pretty darn beautiful from Aaron Rodgers. Didn't slap back, didn't go back and say, hey, I'm not judging you, don't judge me. Just said with pure love and kindness, we're all on our own path, and doing things like this helps me find a greater sense of peace and love in life. Love and respect to you. I know a lot of people may think that they have an idea of how I feel about Aaron Rodgers or, why I want him traded and things like that. At the end of the day, I want him traded because I think it's what's ultimately best for the Packers. That's it. And while I haven't totally agreed and seen eye to eye on everything Aaron, as I have told you before, I have seen him in a charity event go so far above and beyond for children with childhood cancer. I have seen him do some absolutely incredible things. And I think that this is generally a person that is very curious about the world and wants to know more about the way that it works. I think he sometimes gets himself down some very strange, interesting, odd, maybe even counterproductive rabbit holes at times. But he's going on his own retreat to make his own decision. And he is hurting absolutely nobody in the process by doing that. And if he wants to go on a 4-day retreat, whatever retreat that is, kudos to him. If you want 4 days of self-reflection and figuring out more of who you are as a person and where you fit in this world, if I'm being totally transparent, I think one of the things that we don't talk about enough as a society is everyone's role in this world and how do we fit in and those super deep conversations. So if this helps him And if he enjoys doing something like that, to me, a 4-day darkness retreat sounds terrible. It sounds awful. It sounds almost like torture. But listen, I've done a 10-day, I did that stupid lemonade cleanse for 10 days where I didn't eat for 10 days. And it was a really interesting experience. Would I recommend you doing it? No. Would I ever do it again? No. But it was a really interesting experience as you had food for the first time after 10 days and you had this entire rush of energy go through your body. There were some cool moments that came out of it. Having the discipline to do something for that long, like me not eating for 10 days. That was just a cool self-discipline moment of, can I do this? If that helps you as a person in any way, by all means, tip of the cap. You do you. Like I said, that is not hurting anyone in any way. So not only do I respect him for doing things like that and just trying to find a different level of meaning and understanding, I think that's really cool. Secondly, I love how he responded to Schwartz, and I'm all in on the way that he handled that situation as well. Like I said, I thought it was super well done by Aaron. So we'll see what ends up ultimately happening and what decision he makes out of it, but he is going to go on a 4-day darkness cleanse, I guess, or just retreat, isolation, whatever he wants to call it, to help him make this decision even further. So the next thing that came up in the Pat McAfee show is he was asked, and I don't even know if it was in chronological order or whatever, but he was asked about the potential of retiring with Brady and Watt and if he would want to be part of his own class. And he denied that pretty vehemently, as I would have guessed that he would have. I don't think, Aaron, that would be an ultimate decision breaker for Aaron in any capacity. And I could see him legitimately thinking of like, hey, this is a pretty cool Hall of Fame class with Brady, me, and Watt, right? Like that's a pretty insane class. I do think that, like I mentioned in a previous episode, I thought he was going to come back a million times over. Having him and Brady now potentially be able to be in different, Hall of Fame classes is sort of the cherry on the sundae. But even if you're Aaron, like put yourself in that mindset, right? Do you really trust that Tom Brady unequivocally won't come back? Because if you make your decision that you're going to play one more year and retire next year so that you could be in a different class from Brady, and then what happens at like the end of the year if the 49ers, the same thing happens where they're, 13-4 and they're out of quarterbacks again. Lance gets hurt and Purdy gets hurt and they don't have anyone left. And, Tom Brady's out there sitting on the sidelines and they can just give him a call and be like, hey, all we've got left is the playoffs and we're a Super Bowl contending team. Do you want to come out and play for us? I have a feeling he'd probably say, yeah, sure, let's go and do that. So yeah, I don't even know that you could legitimately base it on that, even if you wanted to. And I think there was an interview, I didn't read it or view it, but I think I saw it somewhere where like he couldn't completely rule out from a Tom Brady standpoint if he'd play again anyway. So I'm with him. I don't think you can really base it around that all that much. We did find out that, what Jordan Love's 5th-year option would cost as well. We did find out it's going to be over $20 million. We were expecting it around $19 million anyway, so it doesn't really change all that much. But this is going to be a major decision for Green Bay coming up, and that will be just another part of the process as Brian Gutekunst, Russ Ball, and this Packers front office go about making this insane decision this offseason of what direction they want to go in with their quarterbacks. Not only is Aaron back or not, are you going to trade him? What are you going to trade him for? What team are you going to trade him to if that does come to fruition? If it is Jordan Love, are you picking up the 5th-year option? If it's not Jordan Love, are you picking up the 5th-year option? If it's not Jordan Love, are you trading Jordan Love? If one of those guys isn't back, are you taking a top quarterback next? Like this, there is a plethora of stuff on Brian Gutekunst's plate just at the quarterback position this offseason, enough to make any GM lose sleep for a year's worth of decisions for the entire team. He's got that at just the quarterback position this offseason. So all of it is going to be insanely interesting, but that does bring us to our main topic. So at the start of the day, and kudos to Bill Huber for keeping track of this, and he's done a great job of writing a variety of articles on this over on Sports Illustrated. Like I said, he's just done a great job with it. But to open the day on Tuesday, it comes out, I go and click on this article and I'm like, all right, I think, Bill let it off as something like the line has moved and, the odds have changed. And I'm like, okay. And then I started reading and I think it was like, all right, the Packers are no longer the favorites to, of what team Aaron Rodgers is going to play for. And I'm thinking in my head, all right, the Packers are probably now like plus 105, and like the Raiders are probably like minus 105, or the Jets are like minus 105. It's probably something so minuscule that it's noteworthy, and it's something that I might, talk about slightly on an episode, but like not base anything off of, right? And then I'm going down the article and I had to check it twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. And I'm like reading this through on multiple occasions. I'm like, am I legitimately reading this correctly? The odds on Tuesday morning for Aaron Rodgers to be a member of the Green Bay Packers, and this isn't just some like offshore random sportsbook, even though no sportsbook is just willing to give away money, right? But like, this is DraftKings Sportsbook, all right? This is DraftKings, the legitimate sportsbook that is trying to make money, as they all are. Aaron Rodgers' odds to be a member of the Green Bay Packers on Tuesday morning was plus 600. Plus 600. The Raiders were negative 450. The Jets were plus 350. That moves from the territory of, oh, that's kind of interesting, to, holy crap, what do they know? Aaron Rodgers is not going to be a Green Bay Packer. Now, I'm not willing to take it quite that far, especially because the odds change slightly at the end of the day, which I'll go over in just a moment. But I don't know if any of you know this, and I'm not going to give away the spoilers here, but at the end of Game of Thrones, with like a few weeks left, the odds for who was going to ultimately end up on the throne shifted to like plus, or like negative 600 in this case, for one person. And it seemed very odd at the time, and they were 1,000,000% right. And this sort of had that same feel of like, oh crap, what does Vegas know? What did they learn? And why did the numbers move this far? Plus 600 for the Packers, negative 450 for the Raiders. That is outside of the, they think the Raiders have a real chance to, they know that he's going to be a member of the Raiders in some capacity. Now, we have to take a step back on a couple things. The first thing I wanted to know was, all right, was there a limit to this? Because if there was like some sort of $50 limit, that changes things in what exactly this means. But as far as I could tell, I could not get on the site. It was not a bet, I don't think, in Wisconsin that you could make. I'm not sure why, but people in other states had access to making that bet. And from what they told me is there was not a specific limit, that they tried to bet up to $2,000 and they didn't like crash them out or anything. So this was a legitimate open bet. So this wasn't just sort of like some prop where they're kind of like using it as a promotion or something like that. This was a legitimate bet that you could make on the DraftKings Sportsbook. And I do know some people who did actually bet on it. Not myself, but I do know others. So that's number one. The number two thing is we do have to remember that Vegas is not specifically in the business of predicting the future. They are in the business of making money. So if money swings one way, like aggressively to the Raiders, they may want to have money swing back the other way a little bit more in favor of the Packers, so things balance out a little bit better, and it gives them that greater cushion to actually make money and not have some big loss on their records. That's all good and well, and there could very well be a piece of that played a part in this, but that maybe swings things like I said to like maybe plus 150 or plus 140 for the Packers, not plus 600. No sportsbook in the world is ready to give out money and allow a 6-1 bet. For those of you who think that Green Bay is going to be his final destination and he's going to play for the Packers this year, this is an opportunity, if you can actually find the bet, to go out and put your money where your mouth is and make some serious bank off of this, because, like I said, it was plus 600 to begin the day. So it did end up changing by the end of the day. By the end of the day, it was down to plus 300. That is still basically a long shot at that point, for that he is going to be a member of the Green Bay Packers. The Raiders are still at negative 390. The Jets moved to plus 600. So the Packers picked up a little bit of, sort of margin for error, and the Jets moved back in the pecking order a little bit. But the Raiders, the ridiculous odds on favorite, they were negative 450. They're still negative 390 at this point to be the team that Aaron Rodgers plays for in 2023. So what does this mean exactly? I don't know. I can't tell you for sure. That's where I say, like, I don't have like an analytical of like, here's what this means exactly. I don't want to read too much into just the Vegas lines. By the way, Aaron, in his interview with Pat McAfee, it was sort of, I think he was talking about the Super Bowl, but he said, quote, Vegas seems to be pretty right on a lot of their stuff. I promise you, like, the Packers PR team and Tom Fanning is on top of these things and constantly feeds Rodgers information. I would be shocked if Aaron didn't know going into that episode that the Vegas lines moved in very much favor of him being a member of the Las Vegas Raiders this upcoming season. So him saying a quote in this episode that, quote, Vegas seems to be pretty right on a lot of their stuff, that was a little bit interesting as well. But I don't, like, this felt to me for the first time, I've told you guys all along, if I were a betting man going into today, I would have said, if it's a coin flip, it just feels like the easiest thing is for him to end up back in Green Bay. That's the most common, easiest solution. It's the easiest on all sides. That probably is what ends up happening. Now, I don't feel that way at all. And we've had this string of breadcrumbs, right? The first one was with one of Rodgers' initial interviews with Pat McAfee, where he said, I'm open to a conversation. I know they may want to move on, to Jordan Love. I'm at peace with that decision. He said there's no bad guys here. It's not me versus the Packers. I have a ton of respect for the organization, the city, the management, like all of it, right? He kind of left a little trail there to be like, hey, this doesn't have to be this evil breakup. This can be an adult to adult conversation, and we can come to a conclusion that it makes sense for me to go to another team. That to me seemed a little bit telling. He also had like the comment of like, I still feel like I can win an MVP. Is that in Green Bay? I don't know. That was I think his first interview with McAfee post the regular season loss. So he sort of left these breadcrumbs out there. We've had the breadcrumbs from Schefter and from Rappaport, and whatever tea leaves you want to read. Like, we've had some from Aaron. We've had some from the high-end reporters of like, hey, this could very much result in a trade. I've heard whisper. I can't name names or corroborate anything. I don't have sources. I have heard some interesting whispers that the Packers are wanting to move on, but they want Aaron to kind of come to that conclusion, or are giving him the time first to come to that conclusion. And I can't say for sure whether or not that they actually would go through with it if Aaron said that he wanted to come back. But I do think the reason that they're giving him all this time is that I think they're just kind of hoping he decides he either wants to step away or that he ultimately wants to play for another team to kind of win a little bit of that PR battle. The betting lines moving heavily in favor of Rodgers not being a part of the Green Bay Packers. The fans sort of coming around to this, and it seems, if you look at a lot of the polls online, it seems like the majority of fans, at least on Twitter, and again, every social media is probably going to have a little bit different of a fan base, but on Twitter, it very much seems like the majority are in favor of moving to Jordan Love. Like, now it's starting to feel like, is this some level of inevitable at this point? And that is a totally different feeling than what I woke up with, 2 days ago, a day ago, where I'm like, I don't know, this could go in a million different directions. And I still kind of feel that way. But every day now, every sort of little piece of news or notes that's coming out of this, whether it's seemingly from Rodgers' camp or Rodgers on McAfee, seemingly from the Packers, the Schefters and the Rappaports of the world, what Vegas thinks, it kind of seems to be more and more and more trending towards he's not going to be a Green Bay Packer. And the reason I want to talk about this is because that is such a monumental thing if that actually does end up coming to fruition. And Kyle Brandt on Good Morning Football, yesterday, summed it up very well. Is like, it just feels so weird that everyone's sort of come to this conclusion that he's no longer going to be a Packer. And if you take Aaron at his word that he's going to go and have this, this cleanse, this dark retreat, this isolation, and he's going to make the decision based off of that, then legitimately, if you believe that, then he doesn't even know yet. But man, I can't say it enough. That Vegas line being at plus 600 at one point just really leads you to believe that this is not something that's going to ultimately just end up being like, yeah, no, I'm back, right? Like, they know something in that situation. That's what it feels like to me. So we talked a little bit earlier this week about what compensation could be if he does actually end up a member of the Raiders. I suggested pick number 7 plus a second round pick swap for Rodgers and Darnell Savage, taking on that Savage guaranteed salary. So Green Bay can kind of get rid of that as a bonus as part of this deal. Per the Las Vegas Review Journal, what they thought the Raiders, this is a quote from their article, the Raiders undoubtedly would have to surrender their first round pick, number 7 in 2023, and depending on how many other teams are interested in Rodgers, a 2024 pick ranging from their first to their third. So what they're basically saying is number 7 this year and probably some sort of conditional pick in 2024 is kind of how I read that, which is not out of the question at all. And that would be a pretty significant haul. If you get the number 7 overall pick, and instead of like a second round pick swap, which I was suggesting, you actually get somewhere between a third, a second, and a first next year, probably dependent upon how Aaron plays this year. That would be pretty significant, and it would give Packer fans a little bit of bonus where you kind of have something to cheer for with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams as well, because if they do better, the Packers get a better pick next year, so everyone kind of wins in that situation. So the last thing I'll say in regards to this is one thing I've sort of been coming back to over and over is if Rodgers ultimately wants, and I think that he is going to want this. Remember, this was sort of the thing with Brett Favre at the end, where Brett wanted to hear from the Packers that they really wanted him back and they were going to do everything in their power to get him back to Green Bay. And when they didn't do that, when they didn't come calling, when they didn't say, Brett, we need you back, like we absolutely have to have you, we're going to do everything in our power. We didn't do that. That's when he retired, at least retired. And then he, said he was going to unretire, and then the whole mess played out after that. But what sort of got him in the first place was Green Bay not going out of their way to be like, Brett, we need you, we want you, we're doing everything in our power, we're going to go all of it, right? I kind of believe that Aaron probably wants somewhat of the same thing. That Aaron probably wants Green Bay to say, Aaron, we are willing to do everything in our power to get you back this season. Not just Brian Gutekunst saying in a press conference, well, we want all of our players back. If I'm Aaron, I probably wanted to hear from Brian Gutekunst in that press conference when he did it, listen, we are 100% committed to Aaron Rodgers. We are going to do everything to make sure that he is a Green Bay Packer this year. We are willing to go as far as we need to acquire the players that he can be successful and we can be successful as an organization. And we're going to go and do everything in our power to make sure that that happens. We're going to give him the time that he needs, but we are 1,000,000% committed towards winning as a franchise with Aaron Rodgers this year. If I'm Aaron, that's what I wanted to hear. Instead, I heard the same thing twice in 2 consecutive interviews from Brian Gutekunst, which was basically a canned statement of, when we committed to Aaron, it was more than just a 1-year deal, and we want all of our players back. That, if I'm Aaron, doesn't sound like we're doing everything we can. We'll send airplanes and tanks and everything else down to Aaron to make sure that he comes back to Green Bay like they did a couple years ago. And I have a feeling, and sort of those whispers that I've heard, is that I think Green Bay would rather he just be like, yeah, I kind of want to go to another team, or yeah, I'm kind of going to retire. I think that's what they want, which means they're probably not going to send a bunch of people down to try to convince him to come back, which means they probably just want to move to Jordan Love, which means Aaron is probably not feeling like, hey, is this a team that's really committed to me? Is this a team that's willing to go all in? And you know for a fact that there's going to be a couple teams out there that are willing to do that are going to bend to Aaron's every whim and wish and make sure that they are competing and signing every player that's needed and bringing in a Randall Cobb and maybe a Mercedes Lewis and whatever players he needs to be successful. And when you've got another team over there that's saying like, Aaron, we'll do everything to get you. We're going to give up as many picks as we need, and we're going to give whatever contract we need, and you can run the offense, and what players do you want to make this offense successful? If you're Aaron and you start hearing whispers of that from the Raiders side of things or the Jets side of things, and Green Bay's kind of just like, yeah, we'll see what happens. Guess where he's probably going to want to go, and all Aaron probably has to do is just say, meet with him one more time and say, hey, I want to play this year, but what's kind of your plan? And if Green Bay says, hey, if you want back in, we are all in with you. And what do we need to make this happen? We're like, we want you to retire a Packer. This is all about you. Like, how do we fit this offense to make it work so that you can get back to that MVP level and we can go out and win a Super Bowl? If he hears that, it's probably a pretty easy answer. If Green Bay says, well, we're still kind of going through some things, but if you decide you want to come back, we're probably going to kind of do our thing where, we're going to go out and try to get a couple low price free agents, but we're mostly going to build through the draft and see if we can't get some guys in here that can help us this year. If he hears that, he kind of knows the answer, right? And I have a little bit of a feeling that second part, when he met with Brian and company, is probably the feel that he sort of got, that this is a little bit more of a reboot. They would have to maybe lose some players, add a couple guys here and there. But like I said, it's probably not the all-in that he really, really wants to hear. So that's where I'm at with things. Like I said, I don't have any silver bullet here that I can add and be like, here's another layer to it that I can give you. I just don't. But I do feel like this is a pretty significant moment, like a teetering point in this offseason, that something happened where Vegas saw something, heard something, knows something, that they went from, hey, this is a 50-50 proposition to, like, here were the odds. Just one really quick here. Here were the odds on Bill Huber's articles going into today. It was -125 that he would return to the Packers, -115 that he'd return to the Packers, -110 that he'd return to the Packers, plus 600. It went from -125, -115, -110 to plus 600. And like I said, now it's plus 300. But that is such a monumental move that something happened. And the kicker here is nobody knows what. Yeah, you could say, well, Devontae talked about it. That doesn't change anything. No, because Devontae said like that he wants Aaron in Green Bay. That doesn't change it from -110 to plus 600. It just doesn't. That's not enough. So what happened? And that's what we don't know, but it had to have been something significant enough that it moved the line that much that they knew something and we don't know it yet. So what was that thing? And Aaron just, again, whether it was a troll, whatever it was, but basically saying like Vegas knows their stuff, or what, quote, Vegas seems to be pretty right on a lot of their stuff. Man, that just was like the cherry on the sundae, the icing on the cake for if you're the, he knows what he's saying and this is going to end up with him as a member of the Raiders. I don't know. You don't know. We don't know. My mom doesn't know. I don't even know if Aaron knows at this point, but it did feel like a pretty significant moment and I wanted to bring it up and talk about it. So appreciate you being here with me. I'm going to hopefully talk about Eric Stokes tomorrow, assuming everything goes according to plan. So really looking forward to that episode. Make sure to check it out. Make sure to subscribe. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.